I stared at Vivian across the dinner table. My jaw clenched tightly as the family chatter faded into a dull murmur around me. The smell of Mom's famous pot roast usually brought me comfort, but tonight the rich aroma only fueled my rising anger. "So, did you enjoy stealing my project idea and presenting it as your own?" I blurted out, unable to hold back any longer. Vivian's fork clattered against her plate, and she looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes that had haunted me since we were kids. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," I shot back, my voice rising. "The marketing campaign for the new app, that was my concept. You swooped in and took all the credit." Vivian scoffed and shook her head, her perfectly coiffed hair remaining unnaturally still. "You're delusional, Alara. That idea was mine from the start." Nate reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. Of course, my little brother had my back. He always did. "That's a lie, and you know it," I growled, leaning forward. Mom's eyes darted between us, her expression pained. "Girls, please, can we not do this tonight? It's supposed to be a celebration." "For what?" I snapped. Vivian's ability to stab me in the back? Vivian slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. "You're just jealous that I'm better at my job than you'll ever be." A shocked silence fell over the table as her words hung in the air. I opened my mouth to respond, but Nate caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Right. I wouldn't let her bait me into an emotional outburst. Not this time. I'd expose her for the snake she was, but I had to be smart about it. Straightening my shoulders, I met Vivian's gaze steadily. "This isn't over," I warned, my voice low and even. She smirked, clearly thinking she'd won this round. But she was wrong. Dead wrong. The game was just beginning. As soon as I got home from that disastrous family dinner, I grabbed my phone and made the first of what would be many calls that night. Nate answered on the second ring. "You were right to stop me from going off earlier," I said without preamble. "Vivian would have just twisted it around to make me look unhinged." "Exactly," he agreed. "She's a pro at playing the victim. We need to be smarter than that if we're going to take her down." My grip tightened on the phone. I can't believe she flat out lied to everyone's faces like that. After what she did to me at work. I trailed off, the white-hot fury bubbling up again. "I know, sis, it was a low blow, but we'll make her pay." Nate's words kindled a fresh determination within me. He was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about holding Vivian accountable for a lifetime of lies and sabotage. We spent the next few hours on a flurry of phone calls, reaching out to aunts, uncles, cousins, anyone who might be willing to stand with us against Vivian's twisted machinations. Some were easily convinced after I laid out the evidence, like our Aunt Jenna, who had always been wary of Vivian's ambition. "That girl's been a snake since she was in diapers," she drawled. "You can count me in." Others, like our cousin Derek, were more reluctant. "I don't know, Alara. Vivian's always seemed solid to me. You sure you're not overreacting?" I practically growled into the phone. "You really think I'd make something like this up? After how hard I've worked to get where I am? She stabbed me in the back, Derek, plain and simple." There was a heavy pause before he sighed. All right. You know I've got your back, cuz." By the time the sun began peeking over the horizon, I had a solid crew of family members ready to help tear Vivian down. It was a start, but I knew we'd need more to make any real impact. I was just gearing up to make another round of calls when there was a sharp rap at my front door. I flung open the door, revealing Nate on my doorstep with a grim expression. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. I stepped aside to let him in, my stomach twisting with dread. "What is it?" He ran a hand through his tousled hair. "I just got off the phone with Uncle Marcus. Apparently, there's some new development with Grandpa Harrison's will." A leaden weight settled in my gut as the implications sank in. If Vivian was set to inherit anything from our increasingly frail grandfather, it would make taking her down that much harder. "Well, spill it," I demanded, struggling to keep my voice steady. Nate shook his head grimly. "From what Marcus could gather, Grandpa's lawyers are pushing for Vivian to get a bigger cut of the inheritance than the rest of us. Sole ownership of the lake house up north, plus a nice chunk of cash." White-hot rage lanced through me. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything she's done, she doesn't deserve a damn thing." I know. I know. Nate held up his hands in a placating gesture. But you know how cunning she can be. Who knows what lies she's been feeding Grandpa behind the scenes? I sank onto the couch, feeling utterly deflated. Of course, Vivian would find a way to worm her way into the will. She always did. How were we supposed to compete with that? Nate must have sensed my despair because he crouched in front of me, gripping my shoulders firmly. Hey, listen to me. This just means we have to hit her that much harder, okay? Drag every last ugly secret out into the open until no one can ignore what a lying, manipulative snake she is. His fiery determination was contagious, stoking the vengeful flames within me once more. He was right. We couldn't let this derail us. If anything, it made exposing Vivian that much more crucial. I straightened my spine, newfound resolve thrumming through my veins. You're right. We just need to play dirtier than she does. A feral grin spread across Nate's face. That's my girl, so what's the plan? Over the next few hours, we hashed out a strategy. With Nate's help, I wasted no time putting our plan into motion. First step, gather as much dirt on Vivian as possible to use against her. We hit up every family member and old friend, digging into her past with a fine-toothed comb. The stories that trickled in painted an ugly picture. Lying, cheating, backstabbing. It was like Vivian had been preparing her whole life to be a world-class snake. Remember when she stole Jamie Lawson's boyfriend in high school? My cousin Maya chimed in during one late-night gossip session. Pulled some crazy move where she pretended to be pregnant with his kid. Completely psycho. Or how about when she tanked Claire's job interview just because she was jealous Claire got into a better college? Nate added with a scowl. Each fresh anecdote made my blood boil hotter. There was no limit to how low Vivian would stoop to get what she wanted. Well, this time, I was going to make sure she didn't win. While Nate worked his magic digging up the family skeletons, I focused my energy on gathering ammunition from the work front. I knew for a fact that Vivian's marketing campaign idea wasn't her first offense. She'd been undermining me for years, taking credit for my hard work while pushing me aside at every turn. Late nights at the office digging through file archives paid off in spades. I found email trails documenting her sabotage efforts, records of her client pitches that were suspiciously similar to my own. The hits just kept on coming. By the time we regrouped, I had a full dossier of evidence detailing years of corporate betrayal, enough to bury that two-faced witch 10 times over if I played my cards right. This is perfect, Nate said, rifling through the incriminating files with a wolfish grin. With this plus all the family drama, we can crucify her in front of everyone. Exactly. I matched his feral expression, a twist of savage satisfaction in my gut. She's not going to know what hit her. We put the word out for an emergency family meeting later that week, telling just enough people to ensure the news would reach Vivian's ears. She deserved a chance to show up and plead her case, after all. Not that it would do her any good. In the days leading up to the meeting, I could practically taste revenge on the air, that deliciously bittersweet tang filling my lungs with each breath. After years of watching Vivian slither her way to the top by sinking her fangs into anyone who dared stand in her way, she was finally going to get her due, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. The night before the big family meeting, I barely slept a wink. My mind raced with a million different scenarios as I went over my game plan one final time. I had the evidence locked and loaded. A literal paper trail documenting every lie, every sabotage, every dirty trick Vivian had ever pulled. I'd blow that smug smirk right off her face when I finally exposed her for the venomous snake she was. Still, a nagging kernel of doubt wouldn't leave me alone. What if she somehow twisted the truth again? Turned the family against me like she always did? My hands clenched into tight fists at the thought. Not this time. I had to play this perfectly. First, Light found me redialing Nate's number. He picked up on the third ring, voice still thick with sleep. Alara, what time is it? Listen, I need to go over everything one more time, I said in a rush. I can't screw this up, Nate. I just can't. He must have heard the edge of desperation in my tone because all grogginess disappeared from his voice. Of course. Walk me through it. I took a deep, steadying breath and launched into my meticulously constructed plan of attack. When to unveil the evidence, how to counter any of Vivian's possible defense narratives, which family members we could rely on for backup. Nate jumped in at all the right moments, poking holes and bolstering weak spots until we had it absolutely airtight. "She's not going to know what hit her," he said confidently after we'd been over it a dozen times. "You've got this in the bag, sis." His words finally managed to settle my frayed nerves. Nate was right. Vivian didn't stand a chance against the tsunami of proof I was about to unleash. We hung up, and as I made a final breakfast of dry toast and bitter black coffee, my nerves too twisted up for anything more, a sudden notion struck me. What if not everyone in Arafa Ili was solidly on our side? I immediately fired off a group text rallying the troops, triple-checking where everyone's allegiances lay. One by one, the supportive replies trickled in. Until I got to Derek's message. "Yeah, I dunno, Alara. Vivian and I are pretty tight." Icy tendrils of dread snaked their way through my veins as I stared at the accursed words on my screen. What was that weaselly little snake up to? I thought Derek was with us. New doubts began eating away at my resolve as I imagined other secret Vivian loyalists hiding in our ranks. How could I lay out all my cards at the meeting if I couldn't be sure who had my back? My finger hovered over the button to call Nate again, but I stopped myself. No, I couldn't start second-guessing everything now, not after all this time and effort. Derek's simpering words were probably just Vivian working her mind games again, trying to shake my confidence. Well, she picked the wrong target this time. I was seeing this mission through to the bitter end, no matter what underhanded tricks she tried. Squaring my shoulders, I headed out to face my destiny. Vivian was going down, and there was nothing she or anyone else could do to stop me. The stuffy air of Grandpa Harrison's living room felt thick enough to choke on as I watched my extended family file in one by one. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. Nate gave my arm a reassuring squeeze as we found seats near the front. All around us, hushed whispers and sidelong glances made the tension palpable. They knew something was coming, but no one could anticipate the bombshell I was about to drop. Finally, the last straggler took their seat, and an expectant hush fell over the room. I rose to my feet, back ramrod straight, and zeroed in on Vivian skulking near the back. "I think we all know why we're here today," I said, letting my gaze blaze over the assembled crowd. "It's time to expose Vivian for the lying, manipulative snake that she is." A startled murmur rippled through the room as I locked eyes with my traitorous cousin. To her credit, she didn't flinch, just met my stare with that infuriatingly smug look she always got right before trying to slither her way out of trouble. Not this time. Tugging a thick manila envelope from my tote, I brandished it like a weapon. In here, I have proof of every underhanded tactic, every sabotage effort, every dirty trick Vivian has pulled to get ahead, at work, in her personal life, you name it. Lies, cheating, stealing ideas. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in as I saw the first flickers of unease break through Vivian's mask. "Someone wants to fill in any blanks before I start putting it all out there?" I asked, raising an eyebrow in challenge. The silence hung heavy, punctuated only by the creak of shifting bodies. Vivian's eyes went wide, frantically searching the crowd, looking for allies, no doubt, but she wouldn't find any among the faces turned towards me, rapt with horrified fascination. When no one spoke up to defend her, I gave a grim nod. "All right, then. Who wants to go first?" I spent the next torturous hour methodically dismantling Vivian's pristine image brick by brick. Her past cheating scandals, the vicious bullying in high school, her corporate backstabbing, it all came spilling out into the open, immutable proof backing up every transgression. With each new revelation, the mood in the room shifted from shock to anger to outright disgust. Vivian's composed facade crumbled as a very different portrait emerged. A spiteful, selfish woman who would stop at nothing to get whatever she wanted. By the time I got to the evidence of her undermining me at work, the tension was like a tightly coiled snake, ready to strike at any moment. "You see?" I fixed Vivian with a look of pure loathing. "You're not the hotshot success story you pretend to be. You're just a two-faced, lying snake who slithers over anyone who gets in her way." Vivian's mouth worked soundlessly, eyes wild as she tried to find an out. When none appeared, the fight seemed to go out of her all at once. Shoulders sagging in defeat, she looked up at me with naked hatred. I hope it was worth it, she spat, voice dripping with venom. Congratulations, you got your revenge, but you'll never be anything more than a jealous, bitter failure. Enough! The commanding bellow silenced Vivian mid-sentence as Grandpa Harrison pushed his way through the crowd, face ruddy with fury. He jabbed a gnarled finger at Vivian, furious gaze sweeping over his assembled descendants. Is what she said true? A ragged murmur of somber agreement rippled through the room. Grandpa's eyes bored into Vivian, disappointment and disgust etched into every wrinkle. Then you'll get nothing, not a damn cent. A shocked silence fell over the room as Grandpa's words hung in the air. Vivian's face drained of all color, mouth working soundlessly like a landed fish. But, she finally sputtered, shooting me a venomous glare, she's lying, twisting everything around, like she always does. I tensed, ready to unleash a fresh volley of proof, but Grandpa raised a hand, quieting me. The evidence speaks for itself, he said, tone laced with weary disappointment. And from what I've seen here today, you've brought shame upon this family with your despicable actions. Vivian looked around wildly, desperately seeking an ally. But the disgust was plain on everyone's faces. No one was coming to her rescue this time. With a choked sound of outrage, she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. An uneasy silence lingered in her wake. I opened my mouth, not entirely sure what to say, when Grandpa fixed me with an inscrutable look. That goes for the rest of you, too, he said, voice raising to carry through the room. If any more skeletons come out of the family closet, you'll be left with nothing but the clothes on your backs when I'm gone. I won't enable dishonorable behavior in this family. Not anymore. A murmur of fervent head-nodding and reassurances rippled through the crowd. I shot Nate a bewildered look, but he just gave a small shrug, eyes wide. The threat seemed to placate Grandpa, and he settled back into his armchair with a weary sigh. Very well. I think we could all use a moment to collect ourselves after such an ugly display. One by one, the other attendees filed out in silence, leaving just Nate, me, and the indomitable family patriarch. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I can't believe you actually did it, I blurted out, equal parts awed and unsettled. Cutting Vivian out of the will like that? I never thought you'd go that far. Grandpa fixed me with that steely blue-eyed gaze that had instilled fear and respect in generations of our family. Perhaps I've been too lenient in the past, allowed toxic behaviors to fester instead of snuffing them out like I should have. His mouth tightened into a grim line. But no more. If this family is to heal, there must be accountability. I swallowed hard, feeling an odd sense of kinship with the old man in that moment. Here we both were, fighting the same fight, just using different methods. What happens now? Nate ventured tentatively. Grandpa seemed to deflate before our eyes, the weight of his years crashing down. Now? He sighed, gaze turning inward. Now, we try to pick up the pieces. I caught Nate's eye, a silent message passing between us. Though the battle may have been won, the war was far from over. There would be many more pieces to pick up before we reached the end of this long, sordid road. In the weeks following Grandpa's bombshell announcement, an uneasy truce seemed to settle over the family. Vivian had gone to ground, licking her wounds in private after her stunning fall from grace. I tried not to gloat too openly, but it was hard to suppress my vindicated smirk whenever her name came up. There was still plenty of awkward tiptoeing around certain subjects, of course. Old grievances didn't just evaporate overnight. But at least now there was the promise of actual consequences if anyone else's dirty laundry came to light. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a petty thrill out of seeing some of my cousins eye each other with thinly veiled suspicion at family gatherings. Let the paranoia reign for a while. They all deserved to sweat a bit after the hell Vivian had put me through. Speaking of the devil herself, it was almost a month before she finally slithered out of whatever rock she'd been hiding under. I was half dozing on the couch, binging some trashy reality show, when my phone pinged with an unmistakable number. Vivian. We need to talk. I rolled my eyes so hard it was practically audible. Of course she wouldn't just slink off into oblivion gracefully. I have nothing to say to you. Cut the self-righteous crap, Alara. You wanted revenge? You got it. I'm broke. The family hates me. My whole life is in ruins. Congratulations. Vivian, But if you think for 1 second that I'll just sit back and let you relish in your stupid little victory, you're dumber than I thought. The threats didn't exactly sting. I'd been the target of Vivian's petty torments for far too long to be rattled now. Still, a part of me couldn't resist tweaking the snake's tail just a little. Me, what are you going to do exactly? Expose some deep, dark secret about me? Newsflash, Viv, I have nothing to hide. The little typing bubble popped up and disappeared several times as Vivian no doubt scrambled for a rejoinder. Vivian, we're not finished, Alara. This is just the beginning. My brow furrowed despite myself. What did she actually have up her sleeve this time? Everything okay? I startled at the sound of Nate's voice, looking up to see him hovering in the doorway with a concerned frown. Yeah, it's nothing, I lied, forcing a casual shrug as I slipped my phone back in my pocket. Just Vivian being Vivian. Nate rolled his eyes but said nothing. He knew as well as I did that even a defeated snake could still find ways to bite. The following days passed in an uneasy lull. I tried to go about my daily life as normal, but I couldn't quite shake the nagging sense that Vivian was stewing on something, laying in wait to strike. Paranoia quickly took root. Every unknown number made my breath hitch. Every whispered conversation in the halls at work put me on high alert. Then, one crisp autumn evening, the other shoe finally dropped. I was curled up on the couch, idly scrolling through social media, when a notification popped up from Jenna. Have you seen this? Attached was a link to what looked like a news article from our local paper's website. My stomach clenched as the incendiary headline jumped out at me in bold font. Family feud gets ugly. Local woman accuses cousin of corporate espionage embezzlement. Ice water flooded my veins as I numbly clicked the link.
Hey Ryan, you always seem to laugh it off when you're selling. I understand now, though. You can't really think of any intelligent conversation with simply a high school dropout's head, can you? It's unavoidable, I suppose, because you dropped out of high school. I apologize. My speech was too complex for you to understand. I apologize. I am unable to reduce it to a dropout level. A customer invited me to a mixer. But as soon as the client found out that I had dropped out of high school, they began to despise me in public. I made the decision to ignore it for the time being in order to avoid causing any trouble. After saying, "Yay, well, that's how it goes," I gulped down my drink. However, the client appeared to be even more irritated by this. "Why are you behaving so arrogantly for a dropout? Are you aware of who is in charge of your employment at all?" Their remarks left me speechless. Is this individual even aware of their own position? How do you treat me, your client? Keep in mind that I can easily ruin your small business. Please provide a pathetic apology for your impudence if it bothers you. Alcohol had empowered them to reveal their actual selves, and the other participants appeared surprised by their conceit. They then leaned in to grasp my head, either in jest or seriously. "Come on, apologize to me pitifully." Will he actually force me to apologize? I was about to brace myself when an astonishing thing happened in front of everyone, and that marked the start of the client's professional decline. Ryan is my name. I work at an advertising agency and am 35 years old. Internet advertising, not TV or newspapers. A web ad agency, you know. Sales is my primary responsibility. I work closely with clients to understand their issues and financial constraints in order to provide the best solutions. Hearing, "Glad we went with Ryan," makes it all worthwhile, even though meeting needs can be difficult. However, this is not where I began. My father died in a vehicle accident while I was a senior in high school. My mother put in a lot of effort to provide for my brother and me when he passed away. Making ends meet was difficult even in those days. Mom looked more and more worn out every day from working many jobs. I also couldn't bear the idea of losing her. I have to save Mom and my brother. So I drop out of high school to work. Ryan, I'm sorry you have to go through this. It's okay, Mom. I wanted to work early anyway. Just take care of Joe. He loves studying and should go to college. Ryan, Mom hugged me. Her body was thinner and frailer than I thought. I had to save them. Once again, I made a firm commitment to save my mom and little brother. Finding a job as a high school dropout was hard. I finally landed a gig at a small IT firm. Their ad said, "No experience needed. Education not a barrier. We want diverse talent." With no tech skills, becoming an engineer was tough. I almost gave up many times. Even as an IT newbie, far from knowing programming, I decided to first cram all the basic knowledge into my head. I used my days off to study vigorously, sparing no moment for sleep. Using related books and basic IT technician exam guides, I would actively ask my coworkers about things I didn't understand, repeatedly clarifying my doubts. Thanks to such diligent effort and the strict guidance of my coworkers, I was able to grasp the basics of programming. But I learned something even more important. I used to think being an engineer was all about solitary work, glued to a computer, but it was not like that at all. "Ryan, how's the progress?" "Almost done with the code. I'll help you with your part next, boss." "Thanks. Please take care of this file." I learned on the job that system development is all about teamwork, and communication is crucial to carrying out projects. Besides technical skills, I actively honed my communication abilities to earn trust from clients and team members, understanding the client's needs and proposing good ideas. When we developed a high-quality system, the whole team celebrated. My team started to outperform others. Continuing to provide quality work, our company's reputation grew, leading to more connections with major corporations. Chatting with executives, I often ended up sharing my background, telling them I'm a high school dropout who struggled to get here. I was surprised how many top executives from big companies understood and empathized, saying, "I feel you," or "It was hard getting here." They appreciated my work, considering the adversities I faced. Thanks to that, I was able to steadily increase dealings with major corporations, earning a great reputation in the company. On a busy yet fulfilling day at work, I was headhunted by another company. After much thought, I decided to switch jobs. I believed it was a place to fully utilize what I had learned. This move became a significant turning point in my life. The new company, also in it, wasn't as big as the previous one yet, but its vibrancy and potential for growth excited me. "Ryan, we're almost at Company A." The voice brought me back to reality. Lost in thought again. I was in a taxi on the way to meet a client, daydreaming. The woman beside me, Emily, smiled amusingly. With her striking looks and tall, slender figure, she could be mistaken for a model by those who don't know her. She's a valuable coworker with extensive knowledge and experience in web advertising, often accompanying me on external visits. Sorry, I was zoning out. Just relieved about the recent deal getting finalized. I shouldn't be slacking even on the job. Time to refocus. It's okay, but it's great that the contract with Company F went through. The boss sounded really happy over the phone. He's glad he trusted you, Ran. No, I still have a long way to go, but I'll continue to do my best to be of help to everyone. We got out of the taxi, arriving at our second client meeting of the day. I sighed inwardly. We had a smooth transaction and a good relationship with Major Company A, but things changed recently with a new contact person. His name is Michael, and I find him somewhat difficult to deal with. Apparently an elite graduate, he often boasts about his education and evaluates others based on their academic credentials, which tends to prolong meetings unnecessarily. Although I wanted to get to the main topic, I knew better than to offend someone so prideful. I decided to just listen and nod along to his story with a smile. Just when the meeting topic was wrapping up, Michael suddenly mentioned, "Hey Ryan, I'm organizing a mixer next week. You should definitely come. It's a group dating event, but we end up talking business most of the time. There will be folks from big corporations too, so there'll be a great networking event." I was invited, but honestly, I didn't want to interact with Michael outside of work. "Oh, and you should come too, Emily. I've been wanting to have a good chat with you at this opportunity," Michael said, grinning at Emily. It was unclear if he was trying to hide or not, but his tone and gaze made his ulterior motives towards Emily quite obvious. Michael's fondness for mixers was well known, regularly hosting them and hitting on any woman he fancied. Thinking I couldn't let Emily attend such a gathering, I politely declined. "No thanks, we're good." However, Michael replied with a look of disbelief. "Ryan, you really don't get it, do you? These social drinking events are where you build good relationships for future business. Understand? You'll miss out on great contract opportunities like this." He had a point, but I still wasn't keen on it. Surprisingly, Emily said, "I'll go if I'm with Ryan, then." I was shocked, while Michael looked pleased. "Great. Emily gets it. So Ryan, you're in too. Looking forward to it." And like that, Emily and I were somewhat coerced into attending Michael's group gathering. In the taxi back, I checked with Emily to make sure she wasn't feeling pressured. "You can still back out if you want. It's okay. Like Michael said, you never know where a business opportunity might be. It's a bit daunting to go alone, but I think I'll be fine if you're there with me," Emily replied, smiling at me. Yeah," I managed, feeling a sudden jolt and quickly looking away. On the day of the group dating event, we arrived at a fancy restaurant Michael had chosen. It was a stylish and serene place, and we were led to a private room where Michael and a few men and women were already seated. The women were all stunning, and the men were wearing expensive suits. It seemed like the guests were indeed from top-tier companies. Michael quickly became the center of attention. "I know the owner of this restaurant. He's also a grad from my alma mater, so we have great conversations," he boasted. The women laughed in agreement. Certainly, it's easier when there's no educational gap. The men seemed to think agreeing with Michael was the right move. Complimenting him pleased Michael, and he boasted even more. Every time I mentioned my university at meetings, there are high expectations. But being as outstanding as I am, I always exceed them. Emily and I exchanged glances, thinking, here we go again. Just another session of Michael's bragging. We decided to enjoy our meals and have a casual chat instead. Seemingly annoyed by our disinterest, Michael suddenly asked me, "By the way, Ryan, which college did you graduate from?" I answered honestly, not hiding anything. "I didn't go to college." "High school graduate?" "No. Due to some circumstances, I dropped out of high school and started working. Then I moved to my current company." There was a moment of silence. Then Michael burst out laughing. "You're joking, right? Ryan is a high school dropout. Lower educated than anyone here. In this day and age. A dropout, that's like a living fossil. That's funny." His attitude towards me visibly changed, looking down on me. The other participants were whispering and chuckling uncomfortably. "I can't believe our business partner employs a high school dropout. This could affect our company's reputation," someone muttered. As the alcohol started affecting Michael, he became more talkative and heated. "Ryan, you're always smiling and calm during sales, but I get it now. You're just covering up for your lack of confidence in sales talk, right? With just a high school dropout's brain, you can't really come up with any smart talk, can you?" I stayed silent. I always felt something was lacking. "You just nod along to whatever I say." "Ah, I see my talk was too complex for you to follow. Sorry about that. Can't dumb it down to a dropout level, haha." I was playing the role of a foil to him, but I decided it was better not to stir up trouble and just let it slide. The men who initially chuckled at Michael's remarks gradually began to feel uneasy as his insults escalated. However, there was one person glaring sharply at Michael. It was Emily. I tried to signal to her with my eyes. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." But it was futile. Noticing Emily's gaze, Michael misinterpreted it, smirked, and turned to her. Emily, it must be hard for you working with someone with such a low education. It's tough, right? Having to work with someone so dumb, even for work? Emily's expression darkened. No. There are many people who excel regardless of their education, and I respect Ryan for his work, she said firmly. Michael scoffed. Come on, let's not be formal today. Hey, why don't you quit your current job and work for me? With my recommendation, it's possible, right? Our company could offer you double, no, 5 times your current salary. We are a top-tier company after all. How about it? It's a great offer, right? The other women were envious. So unfair. I want to work for Michael's company too. Well, I'd love that too. Working at a big company like Company A would be something to brag about. But Emily's attitude was distinctly different. Her tone was calm but firm, her eyebrows knitted tightly as she spoke decisively. I absolutely love my current company and take great pride in working here, so I'll have to decline your offer. Thank you. Michael, clearly displeased with her response, clicked his tongue. He scoffed and then slyly remarked, Pity. Well, women are just for decoration in the workplace anyway. If you change your mind, let me know. A beauty like you is always welcome. I couldn't ignore that insulting comment. Michael, please take back what you just said. Emily is a highly competent employee in our company. Not many can match her attention to clients' needs. This response infuriated Michael. What do you think you're doing? Talking back to me? A mere high school dropout? You should remember who's feeding you. He looked down on me, raising his voice. I was astounded by his words. Did he really understand his own position? What? I can cancel the contract with your company if you want. What did you say? You dare talk back to me, your client. If you upset me, I can easily crush your company. If you don't want that, then bow down and apologize for your insolence. I just listened silently to his tirade. Actually, I was too stunned to respond. The other participants seemed taken aback by his blatant arrogance, likely fueled by alcohol. Then, either joking or serious, he leaned forward and grabbed my head. Come on, apologize to me pitifully. Is he really going to make me apologize? Just then, it happened. Splash! Everyone, including me, gasped at the unexpected sight. Emily had thrown a glass of water on Michael. You've had too much to drink, Michael. Maybe you should cool down a bit. Her voice was icy, though her face was smiling. Michael was stunned, dripping with water, unable to comprehend what had just happened. As he realized, he began to tremble with rage. What did you do, foolish woman? Michael, more furious than ever, shouted, Your guy is a dull dropout, and your female employee is untrained. Your company is finished. I'm canceling our contract right here. I responded calmly, Understood. We will send you the details for the contract termination later. Caught off guard by my response, he snorted in a mocking manner. What are you talking about? Someone like you can't possibly have a say in a deal with a major company like ours. It seemed to him that I was just another salesperson without any real authority. As I was wondering how to explain, Emily intervened. Ryan is the next president of our company, so he certainly has the authority to make decisions. This revelation shocked Michael and the other participants, who found it hard to believe. What? A low-educated high school dropout like him becoming the next president? That's unbelievable. You need to come up with a better joke than that. This is no joke. I thought it was common knowledge among the presidents and executives of our contract partners. Let's go back a bit. The reason I joined this company was that my younger brother asked me to join his firm. Actually, the company I'm currently working at is an aita advertising firm founded by my brother. After graduating from college, my brother joined a small business venture, and then 3 years later, he established his own venture. His company grew rapidly in a short time, gaining some recognition in the industry. To further expand, he thought it was necessary to connect with major companies and approached me. You have connections with many top-tier companies like M and K, right? I want you to be the bridge between our company and these major firms. Besides my network, my brother valued my communication skills and wanted my help in improving the communication abilities of the employees, both internally and externally. His plan was to eventually entrust me with the company as the next president. Of course, I initially refused, thinking it was too much for me, but my brother was persistent. This company was actually founded with the desire to work together with you. I was able to go to college because you sacrificed so much for me. I really want to repay you. Moved by my brother's sincere feelings, I decided to join his company and give it my all. Since then, I've been leveraging my connections to bridge my brother's company with major corporations. Oh, Ryan, we're happy to do business with you. We feel secure dealing with you. I was delighted to hear this from many of our partners. Realizing my background, Michael looked a bit pale, but still hadn't grasped the situation. He glared at me fiercely and raised his voice. So what? If you lose a deal with a big company like ours, it's your loss, right? I inwardly smiled at his lack of understanding of his own position. Not really. It's more of a loss for you, isn't it? Recently, your president, Alex, mentioned that the deal we are working on is a major project crucial for your company's future. Shocked and clearly rattled by this, I continued. We were eager to help, but it's unfortunate. I'll report the suspension of our deal to my superiors. Indeed, losing one contract would not greatly impact our company, especially since we had just secured a year-long continuous order with a major firm like F. For Michael's company, the stakes were much higher. Nevertheless, his own blunder would turn everything to nothing, making him bear a heavy responsibility. It can't be happening to me. Michael finally realized the gravity of the situation but still couldn't accept his mistake, trembling with anger. And you, Emily, how dare you throw water on me? Do you think that's okay? That's a serious assault. I could sue your company. He turned to Emily, boasting as if he had won, but she remained resolute. Oh? Weren't you the one who tried to make Ryan apologize first? Everyone here saw that. Indeed, everyone nodded in agreement. And if you're thinking of suing, I won't hesitate to sue you for sexual harassment. The room buzzed in confusion. I was startled to hear this for the first time. Michael, now red-faced and shaking with rage, yelled, "It doesn't make sense. Where's the evidence? That's a baseless accusation." Ignoring his breathless fury, Emily calmly took out her smartphone. I have all the evidence right here. The voice recorder played Michael's voice, unmistakably making propositions for dates, insistent invitations to dinners, and, at worst, hints of overnight stays. Indisputable proof of sexual harassment was laid bare. At a loss for words, Michael finally conceded, shoulders slumped in defeat. To him, I shared my insights gained through experience. No matter the size of the company, I've found that the most successful businesses are led by sincere people. They remain humble in any situation. On the contrary, people like you, who boast and look down on others, are often insecure and small-minded. Michael's face twisted as if he had bitten into something bitter in response to my words. By then, the intoxication of the others had completely faded, and they were all intently listening to my story, nodding with understanding. Afterward, nobody paid any more attention to Michael's words. Instead, everyone gathered around me, eager to hear more about my experiences. When I noticed Michael had disappeared, I felt a strange sense of finality. On the way home, the slightly chilled breeze felt pleasant. Emily and I decided to walk for a while before getting a taxi. With a refreshed expression, she said, "Ah, that was quite liberating." But deep down, something was bothering me. I had to ask Emily why she hadn't confided in me about Michael's harassment. Emily, why didn't you talk to me about Michael? I felt a quiet shock and a sense of inadequacy at not having known anything, despite spending so much time together. You could rely on me more, you know. Am I that unreliable? I muttered, half-jokingly. After a moment of seeming confusion, she blushed and said shyly, I didn't want to trouble you. And I thought, you being so kind would take me off the account to avoid discomfort for me. I didn't want to lose our time together, I guess. Her unexpected response made my heart skip a beat. There's no trouble at all. Please, don't hesitate to talk to me, I said. No, it's on me to become a supervisor who everyone can rely on. I added somewhat hastily to hide my embarrassment. Then, looking into my eyes with a playful smile, she said, You know, Ryan, you've been a dependable boss to me since the first time we met. Typically composed, I couldn't help but blush at her words. The next day, I reported the incident with Michael to my brother, the president of our company. He understood immediately and seemed to be making calls to Company A. That evening, President Alex of Company A came in person, visibly upset, to apologize. As expected, they wanted to retract the suspension of our contract. Apparently, Michael had been a problem in their company for a while, with reports of sexual and verbal harassment. They had already been discussing his dismissal. Due to the recent uproar, he was suddenly transferred to a subcontracting company, essentially a demotion. President Alex, whom my brother and I respected for his character, requested one more chance, promising a sincere approach with a new representative. We decided to let bygones be bygones and continue the business relationship. 3 years later, I formally took over as president from my brother. Thanks to the team's efforts, our company continued to grow and prosper. Rumor had it that Michael couldn't adapt to his new workplace and resigned soon after. Apparently, his bad reputation was quite well known, and he received cold stares from those around him, making his work environment unbearable. His subsequent job search also didn't go well, and now he's reportedly working part-time at a convenience store. It seems that a sudden resignation from a major corporation led people to suspect he had caused some scandal in his previous job, resulting in difficulties getting hired elsewhere. Now, he's stuck working part-time, a shadow of his former self, occasionally getting scolded by the manager. As for me, Emily, and I officially started dating after that night and eventually got married, becoming partners in both life and work. As a still new president, I always keep in mind the importance of sincerity, regardless of position or environment. Education is just one part of life experience and not a measure of a person. No matter how highly educated, no one follows a person lacking sincerity. What matters is the way a person is. I aim to continue learning without arrogance, boldly taking on challenges, and leading my team as such a leader. My name is Grant. A collection of beverage manufacturers with locations across the nation has me as its chairman. I sigh deeply as I consider the journey that brought me to this position. I look at the pictures in the chairman's office and think of the one where I made the pledge to Ryan. Let's become the most powerful, but also the kindest adults. Before we even finished elementary school, Ryan and I, who were raised in the same children's home, made that commitment. We made a commitment to support the establishment that brought us up. As kids, we devoted all of our energy to writing a contract back then. The chairman's office still has that contract posted behind the framed picture of Ryan and me. We put a lot of effort into our education and student lives in order to keep that commitment. Every time one of us wanted to give up, we would read that pact again. Additionally, Ryan is currently the president of the Beverage Maker Group's main subsidiary, while I am its chairman. You should be at the top, Grant, Ryan said to me one day as we collaborated to grow the business. Ryan is nice. He made that recommendation because of the events that brought us both to the children's home. Ryan's parents had passed away. He didn't have any siblings. My mother, however, was still living. She was in poor health and wasn't sure she could provide for me financially after she became a single parent. She put me in the facility then. What happened to her after that I don't know. She came to see me once a month for the first 6 months. But after a year, there was no more communication. At one point, Ryan commented with a sorrowful smile, "Even if I build wealth, I have nowhere to leave it, except for the facility." Ryan forcefully shook his head when I countered that I was in the same predicament because I also didn't know where my mother was. Ryan wanted me to be with my mother again more than anything else. Then Ryan suggested something else. "Let's run the business with your background and identity as hidden as possible," he suggested. "The public face will be me. After 20 years away, you wouldn't want to raise the possibility that your mother returned solely to collect the money, would you?" While he was making a joke, Ryan looked down and whispered, "That would be too heartbreaking." Nevertheless, I found it difficult to agree to his idea. My academic performance was inferior to Ryan's. Juniors showed him greater respect during club activities. Teachers had come to trust him. He had even been president of the student council. However, Ryan painstakingly went over a lot of the reasons I ought to be at the top with me. It would be difficult to defend your identity concealment if I were at the top and you were at the bottom. It may appear to be partiality for a subsidiary president as the business expands. However, people will simply take it as normal if you are the group's chairman and inherently difficult to get along with. Ryan mentioned a lot of other advantages, but this one spoke to me the most. More people admired Ryan than I did. Therefore, without giving it any thought, I simply agreed with him if he stated it made sense. And as the business has expanded, I see that Ryan was correct all along. Nobody challenges the fact that, in my capacity as chairman, I conceal my identity. It doesn't affect company negatively. However, as the president of a subsidiary, Ryan has no choice but to show his face in many situations. He can't be the only one absent from the monthly meetings with the other subsidiaries. It's been a long journey to get here. Looking at the photo of Ryan and me shaking hands, I can't help but let out a deep sigh. But my sigh isn't just from remembering the struggles we endured along the way. I could never have made it here alone. It was Ryan who brought me to this point. Now our company has grown into a major corporation with an annual revenue of $624 million. We have more than 10 subsidiaries. I lean back into the leather sofa and close my eyes. What can I give back to Ryan? I still don't have an answer. Ryan has given me so much: my position, my wealth, and my mindset as a business leader. And yet, I have nothing to give him in return. I feel bad. I let out another sigh. It was filled with frustration at my own powerlessness. There was nothing I could do for Ryan, who could handle everything on his own. People may not know my face, but I know my employees. I believe that just sitting in the chairman's office, buried in paperwork, isn't enough to truly support the company. That's why I visit the subsidiaries almost every day. Rotating through our 10-plus subsidiaries means I can visit each one at least twice a month. Of course, no one can realize I'm the chairman. While I was struggling with how to do this, Ryan prepared a janitor's uniform for me. Back in college, we both worked part-time at the same cleaning company. The owner of that company, who knew about our ambitions, was happy to provide the uniform. After finishing my paperwork in the morning, I put on the uniform in my office. In the afternoons, I visit the subsidiaries and listen to the employees. Rather than setting up suggestion boxes or increasing formal meetings, I believe that overhearing conversations among colleagues gives me a much clearer picture of each company's reality. But the only reason I can do this is because no one knows what I look like. Hardly anyone knows who I really am. Maybe just a few people who worked hard with me when the company was founded. Today, I visited a new subsidiary we established 3 months ago that specializes in alcoholic beverages. As I was polishing a stain off the marble at the front desk, a familiar voice reached my ears. You blend in as well as ever. I was standing on a stepladder, and Ryan was a short distance away. Ryan looked up at me and gave a small wave. Good afternoon. You look all gloomy. What's up? You hungry or something? I quickly folded up the stepladder and slung it over my shoulder. Then, while checking his watch, Ryan casually said, "Now that I think about it, I haven't had lunch either." I took his hand. Without stopping, I rushed into the elevator and headed for the rooftop. To access the rooftop, you need a security card that grants entry to the top executive floor. The only two people who hold this card at all times are Ryan and me. Even the presidents of our subsidiaries must check out a security card from the security office every morning and return it at the end of the day. All of this is to protect my anonymity. It's not the most efficient system, but as the company has grown, I feel that stronger security is necessary. Ryan and I have lived our lives trusting no one but each other. Even the caregivers at the children's home, we were grateful for them, but we could never fully trust them from the bottom of our hearts. It may seem pathetic that we can't even trust our own employees, but that's just how it is. In return, we are prepared to take full responsibility if anything ever goes wrong in our company. As the elevator doors open, I quickly scan the floor to make sure no one is around. As we climb the stairs at the end of the corridor to the rooftop, I hear a small chuckle from behind. You don't have to be so cautious. If an external janitor and a subsidiary president are casually chatting, no one will think anything of it. They'll just assume we get along because we're close in age and find it amusing. If it's just small talk, that's fine. But if anyone overheard the kind of conversation we were having, it wouldn't be surprising if they started digging. You always worry about the strangest things. Ryan leaned on the railing, gazing into the distance. The skyline stretched before us, filled with towering buildings. We had climbed high enough to lease out an entire building in this city. It still didn't feel real, but it was undeniable. So, what happened? Letting the wind wash over him for a while, Ryan finally spoke. You didn't drag me up here just to complain, did you? As expected, I can never keep anything from you. If you just wanted to vent, you could have given me a call, and we'd hash it out over drinks tonight. No need to carry that heavy stepladder or risk someone seeing you rush up here. Ryan shot me a sidelong glance, smirking slightly. I often wonder what kind of man Ryan would have become if we hadn't made that childish contract back then. If I had to guess, a detective or a police officer. He used to read a lot of mystery novels, after all. It's about the confectionery company we launched last year. I leaned my stepladder against the rooftop entrance and stood beside him. When I started talking, Ryan gave a slight nod and said, "Ah," as if he already knew what I was going to say. Yeah, I've been looking into it too. The employee retention rate is low. As expected of Ryan, Ryan wasn't just keeping track of his own company, he was aware of what was happening across the entire group. We both had the same 24 hours in a day, yet he accomplished far more than I did. When I nodded vaguely, Ryan let out a bitter chuckle. Even my useless feelings of inferiority were obvious to him. The company was founded last year, and this year was its first time hiring new graduates, right? Yet half of them quit before even receiving their mid-year bonuses in the summer. You visited that company last week, didn't you? Did you find anything? I shook my head slightly. But I did spend 2 hours watching the break room, and not a single person came in. It felt odd, like they were all being too serious. I sighed, muttering, something's definitely wrong there. Well, it's still a young company. Maybe they're just too conscious of being watched and can't relax yet. I'll check it out next week, but for now, my thoughts are just based on numbers. I'm counting on you. Don't make that pathetic face. You're the head of a major corporation, remember? Ryan lightly tapped my shoulder with his fist. I can't help it. I was never meant to be a leader. You didn't even cry when your mother stopped visiting. You're stronger than anyone. have some confidence." His clenched fist loosened, settling on my back. I could feel his warmth seeping through. From the moment I was placed in that facility until now, I have never once shed a tear. Every child in the facility had at least once cried from loneliness. Even Ryan had spent many nights crying when he first arrived. But I never cried, or rather, I couldn't. Ryan had trusted me enough to show me his tears, and while I trusted him just as much, maybe it was my pride as someone who had been there before him. Or maybe I was afraid that if I let myself cry, Ryan wouldn't feel safe enough to do so anymore. Eventually, I stopped even feeling lonely. It just happened naturally. I never consciously held back my tears, yet here Ryan was, praising me for it. A faint trace of loneliness lingered on Ryan's face. I just want people to enjoy their work as much as possible. For all your distrust, you still see them as comrades, don't you? Even though I can't trust them. We both chuckled bitterly at ourselves. While gazing down at the employees below from the rooftop, it seemed they were returning from lunch. Small groups formed as they walked back into the building. It was the same at the facility. Maybe because it was a relatively large children's home, kids often formed groups to play together. And we always watched them from a distance. If invited, we'd join in, but more than anything, we wanted to spend as much time as possible studying. "Trust is complicated," I muttered. Ryan responded with a half-hearted, "Yeah, it is." Back then, and even now, nothing had changed in how we saw the world around us. We wanted to become the most powerful, yet the kindest. That was all. It wasn't that we didn't want to join the circle. We just wanted to grow up faster. I glanced at Ryan beside me. He still had that same boyish expression from back then, and somehow that reassured me. I wasn't alone in this. The alarm bells in my mind told me this couldn't go on forever, but for now, I chose to ignore them. I had entered the children's home about 2 months before Ryan. Around the time Ryan stopped crying at night, my mother stopped visiting. "Grant, you're always so full of energy." Ryan used to say that to me often. It felt like he was indirectly asking, "Aren't you lonely?" By then, I had already forgotten what loneliness felt like. But there was one day when I couldn't bring myself to smile. It was Christmas, which is also my birthday. Every year, the facility put up a massive Christmas tree. It stood in the atrium of the 3-story building, and beneath it, presents for all the children were placed. I hated seeing everyone gather around that tree on Christmas Day. I never felt lonely, even after my mother stopped visiting, because I had a promise with her. For the 6 months she came to see me, she would always say, "I'm sorry I couldn't bring you anything," while stroking my hair with a sad, apologetic look. But she also said, "Christmas is your birthday, Grant. I'll do my best to be here that day." I believed her. I didn't need her to come all the time, just Christmas. I was sure she would come for that. That belief kept me from feeling lonely, and as Christmas after Christmas passed without her, I gradually forgot what loneliness even was. Of course, my mother never came. Not once. Until I graduated middle school, I spent every Christmas, from Christmas Eve to Christmas night, sitting under that tree. The staff didn't like it since they needed to arrange the presents, but they knew my situation, so no one forced me to go back to bed. I don't want presents. I just want to see Mom and smile with her. At some point, I started hanging that wish on the tree like a letter. While the kids at the facility laughed at me, saying, "It's not like your wish comes true on Christmas. You know," Ryan was the only one who stayed with me and fell asleep under the tree. I haven't thought about that in a while. I woke up in my apartment bedroom, my pillow drenched in sweat. It seemed the air conditioning had turned off at some point. When I had just left the facility, I often dreamed of sitting under that Christmas tree with Ryan. But in the hectic days that followed, I had gradually forgotten. Ryan and I had earned our positions through countless moments of frustration and loneliness. That's exactly why we couldn't stand seeing anyone struggling in the company. We built our fortress. Maybe as a reminder not to forget. I turned on the air conditioning, but the sweat cooling on my skin only made me more awake. The clock showed it was almost 5:00 a.m., but beyond the curtains, the sky was still dark. Summer was coming to an end. I pulled my planner from my bag. Today's date had a circle around it. I had marked it myself last week after talking with Ryan on the rooftop. Today, we were heading to the subsidiary in question. And on the morning of such an important day, I happened to dream about Christmas for the first time in years. It felt as if my past self was telling me, get it together, giving me a wake-up call. The rising sun stunned my sleep-deprived eyes. There are quite a few people still here. The office trash collection begins during lunch break to prevent workload imbalances and ensure that no one is forced to skip their break. Our company requires all employees, except executives, to take lunch at the same time. During that period, computers automatically shut down. For the sales department, where meetings with clients require flexibility, employees can request to disable the system in advance. But even during my last visit, I noticed that this confectionery company had more employees staying at their desks during lunch than any other subsidiary. And it seemed like that number was only increasing. "Excuse me for interrupting your work," I murmured softly while moving between office trash bins, collecting garbage. At the same time, I carefully observed the employees' expressions. And then, I found myself speechless. Every single employee who remained at their desk during lunch had a dark, tired look on their face. Their complexion was pale, and they all seemed completely drained. "Excuse me," I gave a small bow as I left the floor and spotted Ryan standing down the hallway. He glanced at me, signaling with his eyes. I gave a small nod, and after confirming that no one was around, headed toward the rooftop. Is it because they're understaffed? Everyone looks exhausted. No. This company was created to handle child-targeted products and relieve the workload of an existing confectionery division. It should actually have one of the lightest workloads in the group. The original company that handled this work never had employee retention issues. And I don't remember seeing this many people skipping lunch there. Ryan and I exchanged glances, both frowning. If there had been major changes in clients or workload, it would have come up in company meetings, and Ryan would be aware of it. The trash volume is oddly low, too. Is that a problem? If so many people are skipping lunch breaks, you'd expect to see trash from lunchboxes or snacks in the office. But there's barely anything. It's like they don't even have time to eat. Grant, look at this. It was the moment when Ryan and I casually glanced at the cart where we had collected the trash. Ryan's tone changed. What Ryan picked up from the cart was a single piece of paper. It looked like a torn corner of a document with a hastily scrawled message. Another 3-day deadline. Impossible. There haven't been any reports about unreasonable deadlines from clients in the meetings. Maybe they didn't think it was worth reporting. No. If clients keep demanding short deadlines and most employees are skipping lunch because of it, that's a serious problem. Ryan flipped the paper over. It appeared to be part of an expense report with a name written on it. Keith. Either the admin staff handling the expenses or this Keith from the sales department wrote this. Considering this trash came from the sales floor, it's probably Keith's frustration written in the moment. Ryan and I exchanged glances once more. Then, at the same time, we nodded. We were clearly thinking the same thing. I never thought the chairman would notice the cleaning of the office. After finding the memo, we called Keith, the man we assumed had written it, to the rooftop. We wanted to hear what was going on before things got out of hand. Ryan and I were in full agreement, so we personally went to the sales department to fetch him. No one would dare refuse an order from Ryan, who held almost the same authority as the chairman. Keith didn't resist, and he came without hesitation. I need to preface this by saying that this is one of the most confidential matters in the company. With that, I revealed my true position to him. I apologize if it seems like we're secretly investigating. No, I'm actually grateful to know that the chairman cares so much about the company. Thank you. Keith bowed deeply, but his expression remained troubled. Ryan sent me a look. I nodded and handed Keith the memo we had found. We'd like to ask about this note. That. I waited for Keith to speak as his eyes suddenly started darting around. The silence was finally broken by his deep sigh. Then, hugging his shoulders, he slumped down on the spot. I knew someone would notice eventually. I just didn't expect it to be from a note I couldn't swallow down. Please don't tell Mr. Thompson. Thompson. That was the name of this subsidiary's president. Ryan and I had discussed him earlier when we decided to spin off the children's confectionery division into a separate company. Mr. Thompson volunteered to lead it. He had been the head of that division in the original company, and since there were no objections, we had appointed him. I looked at Ryan, and he wore the same expression of disbelief. Neither of us had expected Mr. Thompson's name to come up here. Is Mr. Thompson mismanaging the company? Ryan asked carefully. Keith hesitated before murmuring, It's not exactly mismanagement. It might not even be reflected in the sales, so I'm not sure. Everyone was that busy just because it didn't count as sales. Is he embezzling? As I remained confused, Ryan's voice and expression returned to a calm state. Keith gave a small nod at Ryan's words. It started with just 1 or 2 requests. Mr. Thompson asked for some confectionery to be urgently arranged for his neighborhood association's event. And was that recorded as a sale? No, because it was a small quantity. We categorized it as a sample. The factory rushed the order, and we delivered it in 2 days. Keith stood up weakly, but then the requests escalated. Now we're sending quantities equivalent to stocking an entire store to Mr. Thompson's house and his relatives' homes within just 2 or 3 days. How frequently? Almost every day this month. He claimed it was a donation to his child's school, so I've been going to the factory every day to beg for rushed orders. He doesn't want to take everything directly from the factory or warehouse, as that might raise suspicion, so we've been collecting leftover samples from our business partners to secure the necessary quantities. But we still have our own sales responsibilities, and it's gotten to the point where the entire sales department is handling Mr. Thompson's requests. Whether or not these products are reflected in the company's sales figures, I can't say for sure. But one thing is certain, they aren't being counted toward the sales department's performance. The sales department's performance was poor in the last half year, wasn't it? Ryan and I exchanged a knowing look. Keith bit his lip. The bonuses were low, so I had a feeling something was wrong. But we couldn't just ignore Mr. Thompson's requests. The sales director even tried to bring it up with him, but Mr. Thompson simply asked, "Who you think decides your salaries and bonuses?" Keith's hands curled into fists. He clenched them tightly, as if swallowing his frustration, before finally loosening his grip. But now, I've had enough. If this keeps up, both the company and its people will fall apart. I'll speak up at the next meeting. No, we'll handle it. They'll start looking for who talked to you too. Either way, I won't be able to stay in the company anymore. Keith interrupted me and bowed his head. Thank you for listening. His expression looked as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I used to love seeing kids happily take the sweets I planned and delivered to the register. I was proud to be part of this company. His eyes shimmered with unshed tears, his face turning red as he tried to hold them back. Ryan and I exchanged glances. Then, without a word, we both nodded. Once again, we were thinking the same thing. Keith, when is the next meeting? 3 days from now at 1 p.m. Good. Good. That gives us enough time. Keith tilted his head in confusion, unable to keep up with our conversation. I can get a janitor's uniform for you too, Ryan said. Nah, I'll go in a suit. It seemed we had both envisioned the same scenario. We left, then immediately began planning for 3 days from now. According to Keith, Mr. Thompson made his requests to the sales department during lunch breaks. Moreover, he seemed to misunderstand the fact that taking a lunch break meant employees had free time. He often left remarks saying, "If you have time to eat lunch, then this should be easy, right?" The fact that he specifically avoided making requests during work hours showed he had no intention of logging these tasks as official sales. Each floor of every subsidiary had a break room. It was installed so employees could make coffee during late nights or when they couldn't take a proper lunch break. Separately, on the first floor, there was a courtyard with many tables and benches arranged. It was set up to reduce the burden of lunchtime inside the office. I'm glad I got to see this during lunch. Seems like employees from other departments use it too, more than I expected. I usually spend lunchtime collecting trash from each floor. I had no idea the courtyard was this lively. Ryan and I had put a lot of thought into these spaces, hoping they would be useful for employees. Seeing them actually being enjoyed made me smile under my mask. For once, I guess I should thank Mr. Thompson for letting me see this. The words spoken under my mask never reached anyone's ears. I let my gaze wander, searching for my target. There he is. Mr. Thompson was strolling through the courtyard, glancing around as if looking for someone, just as Keith had told us. He was most likely searching for a sales employee. Keith had also given us one more useful piece of information. Mr. Thompson always buys coffee, a sandwich, and soup from the convenience store. He eats them along with the homemade lunch his wife prepares for him. Keith had been puzzled as to why we wanted to know this, but Ryan and I had exchanged a triumphant fist bump upon hearing it. Just as Keith had said, I approached Mr. Thompson, who was holding a coffee in his right hand and a cup of soup in his left. The story Ryan and I had created couldn't begin without first clashing with Mr. Thompson. I nudged his right elbow with my arm while pushing the cart. Losing his balance, Mr. Thompson accidentally mixed his coffee into his soup and glared at me, shouting, "Watch it." Step 1. Contact established. I quickly scanned the area. Several employees met my gaze and gave me small nods. Among them was Ryan, disguised with a simple mask and glasses. The others were longtime employees who had been with the company since its founding. All of them now held executive positions in other subsidiaries. My apologies, sir. I pulled my cap down lower over my face and bowed. Then Mr. Thompson's low voice rumbled over my head. "Hey, you're that janitor I always see, right?" Got him. Under my mask, I let a smirk creep onto my lips. "Yes, sir. I've been working here for quite some time." "Then you understand my position, don't you?" "Of course, Mr. Thompson." "That's right. I am the president." Feeling pleased with my humble attitude, Mr. Thompson smirked. It was an ugly, smug grin. A part of me felt disappointed seeing how he had changed. "If you understand that, then this will be quick. Do you have any idea how much my suit costs?" "I wouldn't know, sir." "Of course you wouldn't. A janitor's salary could never afford something like this. Look at this. Your fault. You got coffee on my suit." He gestured with his chin toward the stain. Sure enough, there was a small dark smudge, but it was so minor that it would probably come off easily. And now my coffee and soup are ruined too. And what would you like me to do about it? Wow, janitors really are slow on the uptake, huh? I'm saying you need to pay for it. Mr. Thompson sneered at me, his voice thick with condescension. By now, a crowd had gathered around us. Among them, I spotted the sales director and Keith. Mr. Thompson turned to the sales director. "Hey, you agree with me, don't you?" But the director simply lowered his head and said nothing. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Don't ignore me." "Maybe he just didn't hear you," I said. "What? A small sting. A $5 lunch. Not hearing a single voice in this crowded place. They're all minor things. If you can't even let such trivial matters go, Are you really a president? I stepped in front of Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson's hand, still holding the ruined drinks, was trembling from rage, no doubt. When I looked up, I saw his face had turned bright red. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Of course. You're Mr. Thompson, aren't you? You lowly janitor, talking back to me like that. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Even though I had disguised my appearance, I hadn't changed my voice. I spoke at every annual New Year's address and in messages at employee orientations. Someone was bound to recognize it. Sure enough, I heard a whisper. Chairman? Mr. Thompson, however, remained completely oblivious. He was so caught up in his own anger that he didn't even notice the shift in the atmosphere. Was it the way Ryan and I handled personnel decisions that left Mr. Thompson so isolated? Had our judgment in appointing him isolated him this much? I swallowed back a sigh, but Ryan, beside me, wearing the same conflicted expression, let out a deep one in my place. There would be time for reflection later. Right now, what Ryan and I could do was correct Mr. Thompson's mistakes and help the employees who were holding back their tears. I clenched my fist and lifted my gaze. Facing Mr. Thompson head-on, I spoke firmly. It doesn't matter if you're a janitor or a president. We're all here working toward the same goal, to make this company better. We're equals. Who would ever follow a leader who doesn't respect their own people? You arrogant little. What do you know? Mr. Thompson's trembling arm shot up. The moment I saw it swing forward, something warm splattered against my head. Janitors should know their place, his voice rang in my ears. I twitched my nose. The mixed scent of coffee and soup filled the air. The cup clutched in Mr. Thompson's hand was empty while he laughed in front of me. Are you okay, Grant? Ryan and the other executives, who had been watching our exchange, raised their voices in concern. Mr. Thompson, how could you do this to the chairman? Ryan's exaggerated performance almost made me laugh at the absurdity of it. The thought that even Ryan wasn't capable of everything helped me regain my composure, easing the frustration I had been feeling. Mr. Thompson's face stiffened at Ryan's sudden appearance. The murmurs from the surrounding crowd grew louder. So he really is the chairman. And wait, Mr. Thompson didn't realize. Losing yourself to anger is one of your worst habits, Mr. Thompson. I removed my mask and cap, running my fingers through my wet hair. Finally, my voice seemed to reach Mr. Thompson. His frozen expression wavered as he struggled to maintain his composure, though it was clear he was failing. With his face pale and eyes filled with tears, Mr. Thompson furrowed his brows and crushed the cup in his hand with a crunch. Do you understand the situation now? I get it, but this is too much. You think I wanted this to happen. You all set me up. If you have something to say it to my face. I don't need this company. I can find a dozen others that want me. Oh, so you really want me to say it to your face? I took off my work jacket. The suit I wore underneath was now stained with coffee, dripping from my hair. As I sniffed the stain, I could also pick up the scent of soup. My suit got ruined by filthy water. I stepped forward slowly while Mr. Thompson instinctively took small steps backward, trying to put distance between us. Adjusting my collar, I stopped walking. Perhaps startled by my sudden halt, Mr. Thompson tripped and fell backward. I looked down at him and spoke. Well then, I suppose I should bill you for my suit. Ah, I hated to use his words against him, but a suit like this isn't something a newly appointed president's salary can afford. He must have recalled his own words just moments ago. His head lowered little by little. So, you can't afford to compensate me. In that case, I'll need a promise from you. At my words, his hand twitched slightly. Don't mix personal grudges with business, and never, ever do anything that would make your colleagues suffer. What are you talking about? The way you're reacting tells me you already know exactly what I mean. That's a relief. Whatever faint hope he had of escaping the situation must have crumbled. The strength drained from his body. He slumped completely, as if no further words could reach him. But I still had to say it, because believing that my words would reach him someday, that was my duty as someone who stood at the top. If you want to lead, you need to value the people who work alongside you. If you can't do that, step down. I raised my right hand. Perhaps in response to my gesture, or maybe due to the overwhelming silence, Mr. Thompson slowly lifted his face. His eyes wandered toward the courtyard. Then, as he took in the situation, his expression shifted. His hand covered his mouth. His eyes widened in shock. The employees gathered in the courtyard. Most of them watched the commotion with their phones raised. They were diligently recording everything, preserving the evidence. Among the crowd, there were likely people who had suffered under Mr. Thompson's leadership. I figured they immediately understood why Ryan and I were doing this. So many people have turned against you, and they were supposed to be your allies. Mr. Thompson tried to stand, but his legs failed him, and he collapsed back onto his knees. He had no strength left. Was this situation entirely Mr. Thompson's fault? If someone were to ask me that, I would shake my head. I glanced at Ryan, who slowly nodded back at me. He felt the same way. I took a step closer to the gathered crowd. In moments like this, Ryan was always the one to speak. I had left it to him for so long that now, my feet felt frozen in place. Who would believe the words of the chairman who had only just shown his face now? Who would be moved by what I had to say? Doubt shook my body, but I lifted my head. In my mind, I pictured the contract we had signed that day. Mr. Thompson will no longer be given unreasonable demands. The hidden revenues will be thoroughly investigated, and the company's performance, as well as employee evaluations, will be reassessed fairly. This will never happen again. Wait a moment. A voice interrupted me. I turned to see Keith, his eyes brimming with tears. Just dealing with the past isn't enough to erase our suffering. If Mr. Thompson walks away without consequence, no one will accept it. Keith clenched his fists, trembling. I faced him, appreciating his courage to speak up. Mr. Thompson will be demoted to a regular employee. He will start over and learn from the ground up at Ryan's company. I understand that some people never want to see him again. I will ensure that is handled properly. Ryan stepped beside me and bowed his head. Mr. Thompson glanced between us, shifting his gaze back and forth. Then he broke down in tears. Thank you, and I'm sorry. This situation wasn't just about Mr. Thompson's shortcomings. It also happened because Ryan and I, as leaders, lacked experience and insight. I stepped closer to the crowd once more. No one was holding up their phones anymore. I am truly sorry for the hardship and trouble we have caused. I bowed deeply, very deeply. Thank you. A familiar voice rang out. That single statement seemed to signal the start. Applause erupted. Thank you, everyone. As I raised my head and spoke, the sound of clapping grew into a thunderous wave around Ryan and me. Months passed since the incident. Now, Ryan and I stood in the children's home we hadn't visited in a long time. The Christmas tree, which I hadn't seen in years, was still large, but it no longer held the same grandeur I remembered from childhood. If this shift in perception was what people called growing up, then maybe some parts of childhood should be allowed to remain untouched. That thought crossed my mind when, "Sorry to keep you waiting." A calm voice echoed through the hall, accompanied by the faint squeaking of a wheelchair. I turned toward the door. There stood Ryan, an unfamiliar woman, and an elderly woman in a wheelchair pushed by the woman. It was my mother. Mother? At the sound of my voice, she lifted her face. It had been so long since I last saw this face that I couldn't even remember when our last meeting was. As always, my mother looked just like me. Staring at her, I was struck by the undeniable truth that she was my real mother. Yet, Even as she lifted her head and looked at me, there was no reaction in her eyes. Her eyes can see, but it seems like her mind can't keep up. The one pushing my mother's wheelchair was a female staff member from the care facility where she now lived. A name tag on her chest read, Tiffany. It all started when Tiffany saw the commotion on social media and reached out to my company. Apparently, one of the employees recording that day had been live streaming the entire event. From that moment until now, things had moved so fast that I hadn't even had time to process the idea of a heartfelt reunion. To be honest, I hadn't felt any surge of emotions until now. So, reunions are a lot more subdued than I expected. I feel the same way. My emotions haven't caught up yet. Hearing our conversation, Tiffany spoke up. Your mother, Emily, had been working as a live-in employee at a small inn near our facility. She wanted to save as much money as possible so she could come back for her son. She used to say meeting her son again was the reward she was working toward. She didn't have to leave in the first place. More than me, no, more than anyone else here. Ryan had been the one who wished for this day to come. Yet he directed a cold voice at my mother. At Ryan's words, Tiffany let out a bitter smile. I think you're absolutely right, and I'm sure Emily feels the same way. She gently adjusted the robe draped over my mother's shoulders. For just a moment, I caught a glimpse of her frame, so thin it startled me. I widened my eyes in shock, and Tiffany met my gaze. She smiled sadly. I sometimes wondered if the only thing keeping her alive until now was the hope of seeing you again. According to Tiffany, less than a year after starting her job at the inn, my mother's health deteriorated, and she was hospitalized. Her illness wasn't physical, but rooted in her emotional state. She couldn't stay in the hospital indefinitely, so she eventually ended up at the care facility. She never left her room, just waiting for the days to pass. She gradually lost her strength, and now even speaking has become difficult. Tiffany's voice trembled as she continued. Even turning over in bed on her own is a struggle now. This is her own fault. She left Grant behind, and it broke her. But Grant never even knew. If he had known his mother was suffering like this, he would have done something. He's a kind person, so don't say things that make it sound like he's to blame for not noticing. If that's how my words came across, I'm truly sorry. That wasn't my intention, Tiffany said. It's just that it's been years since Emily has left the facility. She couldn't even give her consent to this visit, so in a way, I forced her out here on my own. If her condition worsens because of this, I will have to bear that guilt. No, I'm glad we got to meet. I appreciate you reaching out. And I meant it. I had already discussed this scenario with Ryan beforehand. What we would do if my mother reached out. Both of us had agreed. If she came back just for money, we would handle it accordingly. I recalled Ryan's words. If she tries to hurt you, I, along with the teachers, will protect you with everything we have. Before this meeting, Ryan and the teachers at the children's home had met with my mother. Ryan had only allowed this reunion to happen today because he had judged that it would be okay. I had braced myself for this ever since Tiffany's call. But in the end, neither Tiffany nor my mother had sought us out for personal gain. That alone was enough for me. Emily spends time every day staring at a photo of her son. During those moments, her expression somehow seems warmer. Tiffany's voice faltered. I was worried I might be a burden, but hearing you say that makes me feel relieved, she said, tears streaming down her face. I suddenly felt a hand on my back. It was Ryan. He gently pushed me forward, guiding me closer to my mother. I crouched down to meet her gaze. Mother? No. Mom. I called out to her the way I used to as a child. The words felt unfamiliar now, making me instinctively want to lower my gaze. But I fought against that urge. And then, my mother's fingers twitched slightly. Grant. A faint voice reached my ears. Tiffany leaned in toward my mother, her voice filled with urgency. Emily? Mom. Grant, you've grown so much. My mother smiled. It was the first time in so long that I had seen her smile. Yet the tears in my eyes blurred my vision. Grant, are you crying? I turned toward the trembling voice. Ryan's eyes, too, were filled with tears. Why are you crying? Because I wanted you to let it out. To say that you were sad, that you were lonely. I didn't want you to keep it all bottled up. Ryan's legs gave out beneath him, and he collapsed onto his knees. Thank God. Thank God. His large frame shook with emotion. Grant, have you been doing well? My mother's frail hand reached for mine. Her grip was so weak, so fragile that it felt like I could brush it away with the slightest movement. I held her hand back, and with my other hand, I rested my palm on Ryan's hunched back. Thanks to a very dear friend, I've always been happy. My mother slowly narrowed her eyes, her expression gentle. Then she turned to Ryan and whispered, Thank you. At those words, Ryan's body trembled even harder. David is my name. New York is where I was born and reared. I grew up as part of a household of 4, which included my mother, father, and younger sister. My father worked for a financial company as a salesman. At work, he made decent money and had a good sales record. My dad's income was more than sufficient to sustain us, but my mom stayed at home to raise us. I ultimately took entrance examinations for private middle schools and was accepted, per my parents' wishes. Although the school wasn't particularly prestigious, there were undoubtedly many children from affluent households, and some of the pupils took pride in their modest affluence. I always believed that boasting about money was improper, especially since I hadn't earned it. Being a grade above me, Kevin was the type of man who enjoyed outdoing me and frequently annoying me. Our middle school was big on mixed grade activities, despite the fact that we were in different grades. In mixed stage groups, we even had lunch and performed extracurricular cleaning tasks. I was particularly disappointed since I constantly ended myself in the same group as Kevin, even though it would have been okay if I could have interacted with respectable seniors or attractive juniors. Kevin and the rest of my mixed stage group were cleaning the art room one day during cleaning time. Hey David, you know your dad has a cheap family car. My family has a high-end foreign vehicle. I was merely scrubbing the tables as effectively as possible in an effort to finish the cleaning as soon as possible. However, this talk was initiated by Kevin, who was doing absolutely nothing. I'm not sure. Automobiles don't fascinate me. I have no idea what sort my dad has. You're merely acting as though you don't know, because you don't want to acknowledge it. In any case, my family is obviously wealthier. Who was richer didn't matter to me until I suddenly remembered something. I went to the art room's chalkboard and grabbed a piece of chalk. By the way, my dad's car had this symbol on it. I used chalk on the blackboard to draw the insignia that was on the front of my dad's car. Our cleaning group student remarked, "Oh, that's a Mercedes-Benz, right?" That's what it is, because I realized that moment. When Kevin heard this, he became irate. What's with you all of a sudden? You're just showing off now. That's a low blow, man. You're the worst. I thought Kevin was the real problem, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to start a fight. I just kept cleaning quietly. After that incident, Kevin seemed to target me even more. I heard from a classmate later that Kevin's family car was actually a lower model than ours. I didn't care, but it seemed to bother Kevin. He always seemed eager to look down on me, not just about money, but also about test scores and the number of presents I received for my birthday. I couldn't wait for Kevin to graduate, but then I remembered our school was a combined junior high and high school, so he would still be around me even in high school. That was a real downer. Then, in the summer of 8th grade, when Kevin was in 9th, something happened that would give Kevin even more ammunition against me. There was one incident where I was completely looked down upon by Kevin. My parents got divorced. My dad was a salesman with good performance, definitely the outgoing personality type. Although the term outgoing personality might not have been used in his generation, he had gained momentum. In the words of my dad's generation, my dad, who was in high gear, earned a lot of money and was a good communicator. So, he started getting close to women who worked at night. My mom found out about this and served him with divorce papers. She's not the type to cry about it. She's pretty straightforward and decisive. Dad apologized and asked Mom to start over, but she quickly cut ties and said goodbye. I supported my mom's decision, but reality hit hard. Our financial situation turned grim with the sudden loss of Dad's income, especially since Dad had debts from his extramarital affair. We couldn't expect any child support from him, so we became a low-income family. I had to transfer from my private school to a public middle school in the district, starting in the second semester of 8th grade. Mom felt guilty, but I told her it wasn't her fault. Dad was to blame. I didn't have many fond memories of that private school anyway, so I didn't mind the change. Plus, I was glad to be rid of the annoying Kevin. I told my friends I was moving to a new school, but didn't even say goodbye to Kevin. After summer break, I transferred to a new school and never saw him again. My new public school had many of my old elementary school buddies, and I actually had a great time there, way better than at the private school. This flood of memories about my middle school years came back because I'm currently waiting for a job interview at a company. The company I'm interviewing for is the largest state company in the country. My friends told me it'd be tough to get hired, but I passed the document screening and the first interview. The other day, I called for the results from the second interview. I passed that too. Now I'm here, all pumped up for the final interview. And at this place, I had an unexpected reunion. There were 5 of us called for the final interview. We were to be interviewed one by one. I was the last in line, number 5. Before the interview started, while the 5 of us were waiting, an interviewer came in to check our names. When I saw his face, I was like, huh. It was Kevin, the senior I disliked back in middle school. He looked a bit rounder in the face, so I didn't recognize him immediately, but his way of talking was a dead giveaway. At first, Kevin didn't seem to recognize me, but when he got to my name, he did a double take. David, he said, clearly reacting differently to my name than he had with the other 4. This interviewer, who I believed to be Kevin, looked me right in the eye after calling my name. I felt like saying, "Hey, long time, no see," and waving at him. But given the tense atmosphere of the interview setting, I held back. Before I could do anything more relaxed, Kevin quickly looked away and explained the interview process to all 5 of us as if nothing had happened. Afterward, we were taken to the front of the interview room and asked to sit on chairs outside to wait our turn. The first person was called in, and the interview started. About 7 to 8 minutes later, the first candidate came out, and the second was called in. I quietly asked the first guy how it went. They didn't ask me much, just the usual stuff. Why I wanted the job, what I'd like to do if I got it. He replied with a relieved look on his face. So, pretty standard stuff. The guy who was 4th in line for the interview said in a relieved tone. The guy 3rd in line chuckled, and everyone relaxed a little. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th candidates were each done in about the same 7 to 8 minutes. Finally, it was my turn. David. I was called in. Excuse me. As I entered the room, 2 interviewers were sitting in front of me, and one of them was definitely Kevin. Let's start the interview. First question. Please tell us your motivation for applying. The other interviewer, he was not Kevin, asked me that question. Here it comes, just like the others said it would be. I gave my prepared answer. I'm motivated by my previous job in system development, but I wanted to tackle larger-scale projects. My experience will allow me to contribute effectively to your team. As soon as I finished speaking, Kevin jumped in. Many people say they want to do big things and join our company, but the reality is a lot of the work is detailed and mundane. Are you aware of this? His tone was almost confrontational. The other interviewer glanced at Kevin, looking a bit flustered, but Kevin kept going. You seem to have a naive view of our company. I'm giving you a special challenge, a test, 10 minutes long. The other interviewer looked surprised. Kevin, what are you doing? We didn't give tests to the other 4. Kevin replied, It's okay. This guide is special. I never expected such a reunion, right, David? It was clear Kevin remembered me from middle school. Yes, it's been a long time, Kevin. I was wondering if I was allowed to talk about this during the interview, but Kevin seemed to have more authority than the other interviewer, and no one could control his unruly behavior. The other interviewer looked confused, but he gave up and listened to us in silence. Man, I was surprised when I returned from summer break in junior year and you had just vanished. There was no goodbye or anything, and I thought that wasn't nice. Have you learned any manners since becoming an adult? I could reject you right now without even interviewing you, but it's not fun just to dismiss you outright. So I prepared for this test. I didn't know you were applying until I saw the list of candidates today. I had to scramble to get this test from the website at the last minute, Kevin said, pulling out some papers from his clear folder. It's not a test on a computer. It's a paper form test. Huh. Then he showed the interviewer next to him the test I was about to be given. How about that, Chris? Check this out. Even you, a graduate of Harvard University, wouldn't be able to solve this, right? Yes, it's a math problem. It's too difficult for me to solve, Chris, the interviewer, said as he flipped through the test. See, David, even my coworker, a Harvard University graduate, is stumped by this challenging problem. And it took me, a University of New York graduate, an hour to solve it. So, your chances of solving it in 10 minutes are 0. Less than 0. Kevin laughed triumphantly. I was a bit surprised to learn that Kevin had graduated from the University of New York. He took advantage of my silence to further assert his dominance. I heard from your classmates later on. You became poor because your parents divorced when you were in middle school, and you couldn't afford private school anymore. So you just disappeared. Pathetic thing. Kevin laughed again. I thought to myself how terrible it is to laugh at someone else's misfortune. Well, you've always been a weird one, regardless of your family situation. You're just incompetent and bottom of the barrel when it comes to education. Anyway, I'm going to give you this test now, and I can't wait to see you crushed and walking out of here. I never thought I'd get to enjoy our reunion like this. I should thank you. Well, someone at the bottom like you won't be able to solve it. But if by some miracle you do, I'll hire you with an annual salary of $10 million. Kevin said, laughing as if he was having the time of his life. I had no response to that. The other interviewer, Chris, just sat there with a strained expression. I wondered if Kevin's behavior was even compliant with company policies. Definitely not. I regretted not recording this on a voice recorder. But who would have expected such disrespectful behavior in a job interview? This irregular situation was almost laughable in its absurdity. All right, I'll hand out the test now, Kevin announced, standing up with the test papers in hand. Chris hurriedly set up a folding table and then placed the test paper printed with questions in front of me. You have 10 minutes. If you give up, you can leave before time's up, of course. That means you're not hired, Kevin said, glancing at the wall clock. As the second hand hit 0, he declared, Start now. I flipped over the test in front of me and started reading the questions. As I carefully went through each problem, Kevin taunted, Hard, isn't it? I knew you couldn't do it. Just go home. I ignored Kevin's remarks and began working on the problems. Kevin stopped trying to talk to me after a while, but after 5 minutes had passed, he said, "Your hand has stopped. I commend your effort to try and solve at least one question, but sometimes it's important to know when to give up. Ready to throw in the towel?" I replied to him then, "No, I'm not giving up." My response made Kevin raise his voice. "Even more stubborn, aren't you? It's not good to cling to false hope. It's better to cut your losses and move on to things you can actually do." "You're right, Kevin. Clinging to the impossible isn't like me at all. But you're making a big mistake. I haven't stopped because I've given up," I said, placing my pen down on the table. "A big mistake? How dare you say such insolent things?" "Well, you still have 3 minutes left. Stick it out if you want. It's your choice," Kevin replied angrily. "No need to stick it out because I've already solved everything." "Should I hand it over to you, Kevin?" I said. Kevin became even more enraged. "You have an attitude. Oh, I see. You're just too proud to submit a blank sheet, so you scribbled something on it. But if it's all wrong, it's meaningless. You're not getting hired either way. Goodbye and take care." "Hold on a second, Kevin. Calm down. Just grade it properly. The answers are on the website, right?" Kevin looked at me, disgusted, and said, "That's a hassle." He opened his laptop, searched for the answer page, and compared it to the test paper I had handed him. After a while, Kevin's face turned pale. "Is something wrong, Kevin?" I asked. The other interviewer, Chris, leaned over to look at Kevin's laptop screen, and then at my test paper. "All the answers are correct," Chris exclaimed, raising his voice for the first time. Kevin was speechless. "Say something, Kevin. It's terrible to conduct a test and not grade it properly." When I said this, Kevin accused, "You. Where did you get the answers? How did you cheat? I won't forgive this." Exasperated, I sighed deeply and said, "All the answers are correct, aren't they? And I didn't cheat. How could I have cheated in this situation, Kevin? You printed out these questions on a whim. It would have been impossible for me, waiting in the lounge, to know about this in advance and find the answers. The other 4 candidates can vouch that I didn't leave the waiting area. Now, please graciously admit that all my answers are correct." Hearing my words, Kevin, visibly trembling, retorted, "Don't joke with me. How can someone with such a low educational background solve these difficult questions? What exactly are you?" I answered his question. "Kevin, actually, these difficult questions were created by me back in middle school." I said this with a straight face. "That's impossible. How could a middle schooler, especially you back then, create questions that even I, a University of New York graduate, struggled with? Are you lying?" "It's not a lie. I remember telling you back then that I always got 100% in math. Don't you remember?" I brought up our middle school days. Kevin always liked to boast about his grades and was annoyingly persistent in asking me about my test results every time. Whenever I honestly told him my grades, he would get angry and accuse me of lying, saying, "Do you realize what happens when you lie to me? Stop messing around." I always scored above 95 in all subjects, especially excelling in math with consistent perfect scores. But Kevin never believed me, so I just let it be. "Back in middle school, I always thought you were lying. I never thought of you as a studious person." Kevin still seemed to think I was lying. "Kevin, did you actually see his resume thoroughly? The education section after high school is on another page, and I missed it too." "But look at this," Chris, the other interviewer, said while looking at the computer screen, showing Kevin the education page from my application form. Kevin rolled his eyes as he looked at the screen. "What? Graduated from the University of New York and then went to the Technical University of Munich, TUM. Majoring in engineering?" Kevin read this out loud. Chris responded, "TUM is known as one of the world's top engineering schools. It has produced several Nobel Prize winners. The level is just incomparable. Amazing." Kevin was speechless, taken aback. No, I didn't receive a Nobel Prize, so it's not incredible. I've always been interested in programming since I was little, learning it independently and excelling in STEM subjects. In middle school, I developed apps as a hobby and studied aita. The test you gave me today was something I created back when I transferred from private to public school in 8th grade. At the time, we were poor, and I couldn't use a computer, so I made and posted college-level math problems online to pass the time. I was surprised that you found the one I created and used it in the test. I explained this to both of them. I see. You graduated from the University of New York and then TUM, which is why your post-university education is on a separate page. I apologize for overlooking it. It's an honor to have someone as talented as you work with us. But then again, are you sure our company is right for you? With your qualifications, it would be easy for you to join a renowned IT company in Germany or even start your own business, right? Chris said, looking me in the eye. Kevin remained silent throughout. Yes, as you said, I considered working for a major IT company and even starting my own business. However, I wanted to contribute to my home country, America. So, I wanted to work for your company. I believe there are endless possibilities here with a global perspective. When I responded this way, Chris's eyes lit up. Yes, our company is still growing, so we really appreciate your help. Right, Kevin? Chris sought Kevin's agreement. However, Kevin, unable to accept the situation and with his pride wounded, muttered to himself, "How could I lose to David?" Kevin, you're not losing. You're a University of New York graduate, after all. Chris tried to console him, but Kevin lamented, I was always jealous of David in middle school. He was respected by everyone, teachers and students alike, and was capable of everything. I was relieved when he transferred out. I worked hard, graduated from the University of New York, and climbed up to this position at a renowned IT company. And now, he's threatening my status again. Give me a break. Then, the door to the interview room opened with a click. Turning around, I saw a man standing there, President Smith. It was the CEO. I came to check on the final interview, which took quite some time, and I overheard some of the conversation at the entrance. I made a mistake in leaving the interview to Kevin. You've let your personal feelings interfere far too much. Chris must have been in a tough spot, not being able to speak up against his senior. But now that I'm here, I can say this clearly as the president. First, David, the president then called my name. Yes, I responded. The president said, actually, I was interested in you since seeing your application. Chris mentioned earlier, and I agree that you could earn a much higher salary at a top German company or even start your own business with your talent. But you still want to work for our company. Thank you, President. Yes, I did think a lot about where to work, but I chose to work for your company. As I told Chris earlier, I want to help develop an American company with a global vision, I replied. The president nodded in agreement. Thank you. Then he continued speaking. And now, Kevin. Kevin was called. He said, yes, in a small voice and looked at the president. He looked like a puppy staring anxiously at its owner, expecting anger. I'm shocked at your brazen behavior. You've shamelessly brought your personal vendetta into my company's recruitment process. You're fired, the president declared firmly. Please, President, anything but that. I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me, Kevin begged with tearful eyes. But the president was unyielding. Kevin, work is all about trust. Actually, it's not just work. All relationships are based on trust. I trusted you with the interview process, and you betrayed that trust by acting on your own whims. A talented candidate like David comes for an interview, and you try to disqualify him with terrible treatment. If we let that happen, it would be a significant loss for the company. Losing you would be better than losing David. In fact, we don't need someone like you at all. Someone who loses trust, regardless of being a University of New York graduate. Kevin just looked down silently. Chris appeared somewhat relieved. The president continued, staring. Well, I did trust you with the interview, but fairness is crucial. So, we installed a voice recorder in the interview room without your knowledge. The president placed the recorder on the table and played the recording. I inwardly cheered for the president for having a voice recorder. The recorder started playing the conversation. Kevin's voice, full of intimidation, was unmistakable. No matter your family background, you're just incompetent with a bottom-tier education. Did you even graduate high school? Just barely a high school graduate, right? Anyway, I'll give you this test now and enjoy seeing you crushed and leaving. I never thought I'd enjoy such a reunion. Thank you. This test is probably insolvable for someone at the bottom. If you somehow solve it, I'll hire you for an annual $10 million salary. The president stopped the recording there. So, Kevin, what an outrageous thing you said. You thought David was the bottom of the barrel, but he's actually a highly educated and capable individual who solved all the difficult questions. Who's going to pay the promised $10 million? Should I, the president, pay it? If you decide such things on your own, we might have to consider legal action. It's a serious offense, Kevin. The president spoke sternly. I'm sorry, President. It was just a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean it. Kevin tried to excuse himself. You conducted an unnecessary recruitment test with a candidate based solely on your words. You'll have to take responsibility for your actions. We'll cut your salary and bonus this month and allocate it as part of David's $10 million reward. Of course, it won't be enough, so you'll have to make monthly payments to cover the rest, the president said even more sternly. Kevin looked utterly despairing and couldn't say anything more. The president continued without hesitation. You're also responsible for your words and the crime of insulting David. If you're sued for defamation, you'll lose. I'll keep this recording with me. I couldn't help but admire President Smith for taking down the obnoxious Kevin so thoroughly. I felt incredibly relieved and pledged in my heart to follow President Smith and contribute to his company. 3 months have passed since then. I was hired by Smith's company, a leading 8 firm named Tech, and worked in a significant position. Since joining, Tech has embarked on more global business strategies, and I've contributed using my German skills and the technology knowledge I gained from the Foreign Engineering University. Kevin had to leave GTE and now works as a systems engineer in a smaller company. I happened to bump into a middle school classmate the other day, and we talked for a bit in a cafe. His name was Brian, and he was in the same group as me in middle school at the time. He and Kevin had been hanging out together. You're working at CHCH, right? Kevin used to work there too. He became famous among us for getting into the University of New York and joining a renowned IT company. But I heard he wasn't well liked due to his attitude, Brian said. I told Brian the name of the company I worked for, and he told me about it. But you know, Kevin was really down after you suddenly transferred. He kept saying, why did he have to leave, and looked dejected. No, Kevin said he felt refreshed when I left. You should have been more friendly with him. He always acted tough and wasn't honest. Deep down, he wanted to be friends with you, Brian said. If that was true, it was quite clumsy of Kevin. But I felt a bit relieved to hear it. This is something I heard recently. The president told me that Kevin had offered to pay me several hundred every month after he left CHCH to help cover the $10 million he owed me. But I refused to accept it because I was being paid enough at my company. As I didn't want to take money from someone struggling, I'd rather focus on developing the company and improving both its performance and my salary. The president said Kevin seems to have changed a bit since working at another company. He's reflecting and working diligently. Kevin's a capable guy when he's not overconfident. If he continues to work hard, I'd be willing to work with him again, the president remarked. I felt the same. One day, Kevin and I, such an oil and water relationship, could become something more meaningful, like a well-mixed dressing. Even if we don't thoroughly blend, we could still complement each other. A few months later, Chris and I were assigned to conduct mid-career interviews. On the day of the interviews, Chris noted while looking at an application form, "The fifth candidate is seeking re-employment." Indeed, Kevin. University of New York graduate. What should we do? We both knew our thoughts were aligned. If Kevin had truly repented and was willing to cooperate and work with everyone, we'd want to work with him again. "Excuse me," a man said as he entered the interview room. Seeing Kevin's softened expression, Chris and I exchanged knowing glances and started the interview.